Welcome to the last day of the year and the eve of your new year. Please let that sink in. Because simply put, we each have yet another chance for a do-over. Not everyone got this, so let's make it count by finding our it factor, our USP, our je ne sais quoi, and using it to live a purposeful life. Author and speaker Marcus Buckingham says, if you want to win, excel, or stand out, you're going to have to take the few unique things about you that are beautiful and powerful, take them seriously, and turn them into contributions. He also notes that these things that drain your energy, though you may excel at them, tend to inhibit learning. So it's time to stop trying to be what you're not called to be and start working at being what you are called to be. And with me to give us some direction with this is Foluso Gbadamosi, Executive Director of Junior Achievement Nigeria, author, speaker, trainer, and a Gallup certified strengths coach who helps individuals leverage their strengths to achieve greater performance in different areas of their lives. Her newest book, Unleash Your Superpowers, is a must-read. Welcome, Foluso.
Good morning. Thank you.
Good morning. It's the 31st of December. In a few hours, it's going to be 2023.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, yeah, it really is. So for me, the first thing I'd like us to even answer is, what is it?
What is it? So when I think about your it is really your talents. And what are your talents? Your talents are those things that are unique to you. So those special things about you that you might even take for granted, that you don't even notice because they just come so easily to you. Those things that you do easily, the way that you process things easily, your thinking patterns, all of those things that are innate to you, you didn't ask for them. They were just given to you freely before you were created. And that is actually what your it is. So that it is really just you and all of those things inside of you that make you unique to everybody else.
And is that the same thing as talent?
Yes, it's your talents. I like to call them your superpowers because everybody has different ones, you know. So when you think about superheroes, I like superheroes. I think many of us do, right? You think about Spider-Man, you think about X-Men, you think about all the different talents or gifts that they have that, you know, are quite unique to them. You don't see Batman trying to be like Spider-Man, right? Trying to let out nets and whatnot, you know.
Very true.
Everybody kind of knows what they have that is special and unique to them, and they use those things for success. And they also leverage the it of other people as well.
Oh, wow. Okay. So how do you even identify what this it is? And then when you say leveraging it, what other people's it is, how do you do that? So first, how do you identify your own it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So identifying your it is actually a journey, right? It's not an overnight thing. It's not something that you just do like this and you say, hey, I know what my it is. If you're not going to use one of those structured ways in which people do it, you know, taking assessments and whatnot, it's really you being intentional about figuring out what it is that brings life to you. So let me give examples, right? So for instance, if you're working a job, there might be certain aspects of your job that when you are doing them, you even lose track of time. Or you're in school, you are studying, you know, there might be certain courses that when you take them, you just realize that, man, this course is just coming easily to me. And your classmates might even be complaining that I really hate this course, but you love it, right? So it's really you being intentional about discovering what those things are that for you just come easily to you. They come naturally to you. For some people, it's things like being able to communicate with all kinds of people. Like they have no issues communicating with different types of people. For some people, it's problem solving. For some people, it is being able to empathize and connect with people that are going through pains, right? So as an example, you see somebody like a Mother Teresa who, you know, just was so empathetic and empathizing to people within her community and able to help them through their problems. Somebody else might be looking at her and thinking, why? You know, like, what is she doing? But for her, that came naturally to her, you know, and she spent a lot of time focusing on that. And that's how she was able to make world impact, you know, by just being herself. Whereas for you or me, you might be like, okay, really, what she was doing, I can't even imagine doing it, right? So you have to be very, very intentional. And there's many clues in our lives from when we were children.
Okay.
So many clues, you know. people that talk a lot in class, those that stir up, kind of stir up people to kind of talk more, or, maybe find something that they're really passionate about and find a way to get other people involved in it. Those are some signs that you can tell. People that are deep thinkers, those people that are just quiet. They're quiet, they're assessing situations, and then they just come up with a solution, and everybody's like, oh, wow, and you were so quiet. So, it's little things that you might not have paid attention to because people might even have complained about it, right? So, like, for instance, you are too quiet. Why don't you like to talk in class? Or, oh, you talk too much. Or, oh, why are you always, just getting involved in things that nobody asked you to get involved in? Those little things, if you take a positive look at it, they actually point in directions of what your its are. But the challenge, I think, for most of us is that the world has defined talent in a very limited way, right? So many of us, when we were growing up, saw talents as things that were very obvious. You can sing, you can dance, you can hold a microphone and, do magic with it. Whereas a lot of these talents are actually things that are not as obvious to the eyes, but you have to be intentional in realizing the things that make you energized, the things that bring life to you, and those things that when you are involved in them or when you're doing them, you're not really making much of an effort. It's just kind of coming naturally to you.
I see. So I have a question, because you've said sometimes there are even things that frustrate other people about you. So if I'm going to use myself as an example, I always end up trying to fix. Yeah. If there's a problem,
you want to fix
even
it.
if it's not
Your
anything
business.
to do with me, I will always put my head inside. And then I will get into trouble for it. And then I'm like, why do I always take Panadol for other people's headache? So that is, I don't know, it's not a positive thing though, is it?
So that's not a negative thing. I'll tell you what we all have to learn on this journey of self-discovery. You have to learn how to manage yourself, right? So beyond self-awareness is self-management. Self-management is huge because that skill that you have to solve problems for people, even when it has nothing to do with you, is a skill that can be positively applied. Once you are aware that there might be some situations where it's not calling for you to give your opinion, or it's not calling for you to solve the problem because maybe they didn't ask you. So maybe as you're getting older, you learn how to take the cues, right? If somebody asks you, then you can jump in there and use your amazing superpower of trying to solve problems. But as you get older as well, you learn self-awareness and you kind of learn the emotional intelligence of knowing, okay, this one needs me in it and this one doesn't need me in it. Problem solving is actually a fantastic talent. Not everybody has it. You might assume that other people have it as well because it comes so naturally to you, right? But what you will discover when you become more intentional and you start paying attention is that everybody actually doesn't have it. But you have to now figure out the times that you should use it versus the times that maybe you should just sit still. So let me give you an example, right? So I'm super positive. Positivity is like my number one talent. Not every situation calls for me to bring my positive angle. There are some situations where somebody wants to have a rant. They just want to, pour out their hearts. They just want me to just listen. Not for me to tell them all the positive angles that they should, look at concerning this particular situation. I've had to learn when to turn it down and when to turn it up. Some situations call for me to really turn it up and, ginger up my team, fire up people and say, guys, we can do it. But some situations actually call for me to just listen. Listen. And that is one of, I think, the biggest lessons I've had to learn with regards to my own its and my own superpowers is learning when to turn them up and learning when to turn them down.
Wow. Okay. So how does this now connect with purpose, living a life of purpose?
That's a great question. So what is purpose, right? Purpose of anything is the reason why it was made. The purpose of your earrings is that you put it in your ear and wear it and it beautifies you. Purpose of your clothes, your phone, all of that. Your charger, your phone charger charges your phone. It doesn't charge, your laptop as an example. When you think about the reason why you are made, there's no way that your innate abilities and your talents don't connect to that, right? So ultimately, when you start thinking about the things that give you energy, your its, the things that make you come alive, the things that you do easily, all those things are clues to your purpose. So let me use another example. Let's look at like an Oprah Winfrey, right? Oprah Winfrey started out her career as like a newscaster, right? So she's very good at communication. Oprah Winfrey was a terrible newscaster because she's very empathetic. So she would connect with people's personal pain and take it upon her head. In fact, there's an article that speaks about how there was a fire once, and she literally went and gave those people her blankets and things from her house because she really felt so bad for them. She actually got fired as a newscaster, but she's an excellent talk show host because she's able to connect with whoever it is that she's speaking to. She's able to bring stories out of them. She's able to do it in such a way that might not be great for newscasting, but it's great for storytelling and for talk show hosts and for, really being able to capture and activate an audience. Now, on the other hand, when you look at Oprah and her life and how she has become, she's been labeled the queen of media, and how now she's even influencing beyond media. Oprah has actually influenced policies in the US. She's transformed lives of people all around the world. That is somebody who has been very intentional, not in focusing on anybody else's eats, but on her own eats, right? Developing it to the point that she's now a spokesperson for even people that don't know who she is. She's a spokesperson for causes beyond, I'm sure, what even she expected, because she's been very intentional. She didn't fixate on the fact that she was a terrible newscaster, thankfully. She just, figured out that maybe there's other ways that she can use this her its or this her talent of communication and empathizing. So I think it's really about us understanding that our discovery of purpose it's really up to us, right? So 2023, every single thing about you discovering yourself, discovering your purpose, using your talents, all of that, it's entirely up to you. And you will get clues. Every single day there will be clues. Those things that you hate doing versus those things that you love doing. Those things that give you life versus the things that every single time you do this thing, it just drains you. It doesn't matter how hard you try, it just drains you. You might know how to do it, but it constantly drains you. And so when you look at people like Oprah and very successful people, you see that they have been very intentional in just focusing on those things. You don't see a lot of those people, maybe as an example, if you're somebody that's supposed to be in front of the scenes, you don't see them as also trying to necessarily coordinate like the behind the scenes and vice versa. Somebody who is maybe very good at technical things like behind the scenes, they don't have to go and grab the mic and talk. You know what I mean? They know that, when it comes to grabbing the mic and talking, that's not me. However,
but then that is because they've been intentional. Because
yes,
if we
absolutely.
use the world we live in today, a lot of people behind the scenes want to be in front of the camera, and that's not necessarily where their strength lies.
Exactly. We could have so many examples of what you're saying in a very similar way. And that is why for 2023, there's nothing else that you do. It is be intentional about your life. Be intentional about yourself. Be intentional about understanding yourself. Be intentional about deploying your natural talents in ways that can be successful, right? So if you're not intentional, in my opinion, you can't be successful. And that's a very, it's very broad, because a lot of people will say, okay, what do you mean about being intentional?
Yeah.
Being intentional about yourself is you focusing on your own needs, not looking at anybody else. So many of us have also seen successful people that we want to be like, right? And that is something that is huge in our parts of the world, especially because, there's a lot of, issues. So many people see certain names and I just want to be like that person. But what if that is not your it? What if your it is the complete opposite of that person's it? So it's really about you taking the principles that successful person has used and applying it to your life. That person has discovered their it and they're using it. You need to discover yours. So you have to be intentional. That's the number one thing. If you're not intentional, you will not be discovering anything.
You have to be intentional. How do you simplify being intentional? Because it sounds easy, but I think that's potentially where the biggest challenge is for a lot of us.
Yeah.
So how do you do that?
So in the context of our particular conversation, being intentional, for instance, in 2023, is you beginning to ask yourself some very tough questions about yourself. What are the things that motivate me? What are the things that activate me? What are the things that energize me on a daily basis? If I usually tell people that they should make a list. So at the end of every day, make a list of every single thing that you did. And then put E or D next to them. E is energized, D is drain. Every single thing that energized you, put an E next to it. Every single thing that drained you, put a D next to it. That will help you begin to discover the things that naturally on a daily basis energize you. Now, when it comes to like work or like school or the things that all of us are doing in one way or the other, or your business, you will find that when you do that exercise, you begin to understand why maybe you are really coming alive or why maybe you are highly drained on those things that you're doing. If you spend, let's say, using the Pareto principle, if you spend 80% or 70% of time doing things daily that drain you, you are not living in your eats in any way. Because you are literally stretching yourself beyond what you are supposed to be stretched with. Now, if it's the other way and you're spending 70 to 80% of the time doing the things that energize you on a daily basis, you will begin to find those patterns that will lead you into, you know, better self-awareness and purpose discovery ultimately, because you begin to get the pointers and the clues towards the things that really bring you alive.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So, I was going to ask you what the four most important things one must do to use their it to live in purpose, and I'm assuming the first one is what you've said about being intentional.
Yes, absolutely. That's, you know, that's always the first one. But just to kind of, you know, bring this home more. So I call it like the 4Ds, which I believe that all of us must do to be intentional about, you know, discovering, and not just discovering, but also living the best version of our lives and being the best version of ourselves. Number one is discover, which we're talking about, right? Discover is you being intentional in figuring out what your talents are, what drains you, what energizes you.
Can other people help you in your discovery?
Absolutely. You need to ask people questions. So for instance, when I began this journey, I was stalking everybody. My family, my friends, my spouse, my colleagues, just asking people what they think that you're good at. In fact, there's just so many things to talk about, and we don't have enough time. But a great way, really, is to just ask people around you. They should just tell you 2 to 3 things that they think that you're really good at. Or also ask yourself, what are those things that people always ask me to do?
I used to do that. I used to ask people, and after a while, like, I began to feel very silly.
Why?
So I stopped asking, because I was like, I'm probably bugging everybody. And I still didn't come out of it feeling confident about the things they were saying.
So one step is to start by asking people. Now, if you ask people, and when you are asking people, please don't feel silly, because remember that you are on a journey of self-discovery, and you need people to help you, right? Ask people for 2 to 3 things that they think that you are really good at. They should make it short, you know. Don't don't make it into like a long paragraph or like a long sentence. If you write them down, you will see links. There's no way that you will not see links. You will begin to see the connections between the things that people are saying about you. Now, if you now do this energizers and drainers exercise on a daily basis, even if you just do it for like 2 weeks, you will begin to link things together. Now, outside of that, right, because there's so many ways to discover, and discover is just one of the steps, right? So you can do those things. You can also take assessments, right? There's so many assessments online. So like the Clifton Strengths Assessment, which you did as well, which I've done, which is just excellent in helping you. All those things help you get clues. But nobody's going to help you do. Do you understand? Nobody's going to help you do. So when you now discover all these things, you have to deploy.
Okay, so discover, and then the second one is deploy.
And what is deploy? Intentional use. So knowing that I'm really good at this thing. So now, Feran, you're quite good at what you do. So you have this show, the segment of this show where you do this ever so often. As you begin to deploy, you also are developing yourself. Okay, because so you're getting better.
Discover, deploy.
Yes.
Are there 2 more?
Yes. So discover, deploy, develop, which is intentional use, which is also training. Yes, exactly, which is also training. So sometimes when people have discovered, they now do trainings, right? So I know that these are my natural talents. How do I get my talents to a place of strength? By doing trainings, by intentional things that will then help you get to that great level of mastery. And the last one is dominate, because ultimately, when you've done all of that, you are now on the level where people, when they think about that thing, they're thinking about you.
I see. So the 4 Ds: discover, deploy,
develop,
dominate. If you haven't taken anything else away, take those 4 things away, because 2023 really is the year where we really begin to use our it to fulfill purpose.
Absolutely.
And as always, we've come to the end.
So quick.
I know, but I really do hope that, people have written down some things. And Foluso, you're going to be my guest again in 2023. We're going to do this periodically so we keep refreshing. But thank you so much for this.
Thank you.
It really has been awesome. And 2023, year of great things.
Yes.
So good luck, everybody. Happy New Year in advance. And thank you so much for watching.